Orban is interested in receiving some benefits and cheap Russian oil. But unfortunately, he is ready to sacrifice principles, European values and security interests of the whole Europe to get cheap Russian oil. I think it's a huge political mistake.
Vladimir Putin vowed to respond to Donald Trump's plans to resume nuclear weapons testing with reciprocal tests. And British military planners have been in northern Norway to rehearse for a hypothetical Russian attack on NATO territory. Quite a lot to discuss then with Oleksandr Merezkho, chair of Ukraine's Foreign Affairs Committee. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on Times Radio, Ms. Merezkho. You've got Viktor Orban visiting the White House. Do you think that he will manage to secure some sort of talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, perhaps even including your president?
Thank you for having me. Of course, I'm not surprised that Mr. Orban will be trying to do it for diplomatic, political reasons, but I'm very skeptical that there will be any tangible result, because it's impossible. I'm talking about possibility to organize such summit between President Trump and Russian dictator Putin in Budapest. The thing is that, from my perspective at least, it's a kind of political gesture. It's part of election campaign by Mr. Orban. He understands that soon will be elections. Democratic forces in Hungary can win elections. His political party can be defeated. So he's trying to do something on diplomatic front. But I believe that it will not produce any result.
Well, it's also speculated that what will be at the back of his mind is trying to seek exemptions from those US sanctions on using Russian oil. What do you make of that?
The thing is that Mr. Orban has been trying to do it many times to save Russian oligarchs from European, American sanctions. And now he's trying to save Russian companies on which President Trump, and it was a very good, very timely decision, imposed sanctions on Russian energy companies. And of course, Orban is interested in receiving some benefits and cheap Russian oil. But unfortunately, he is ready to sacrifice principles, European values and security interests of the whole Europe to get cheap Russian oil. I think it's a huge political mistake.
Well, we'll see what happens with that. What about the weapons and the nuclear weapons testing? Donald Trump threatening to resume nuclear weapons testing and Vladimir Putin saying that he will respond.
Well, first of all, I would like to remind that there is an international treaty prohibiting nuclear tests in all spheres. But unfortunately, neither the US nor Russia are parties to this international agreement. But what we have, at least on the Putin side, it's another attempt or blackmail, a kind of nuclear saber rattling, which is very typical for Putin. But it's part of bluff, it's part of his blackmail. So I believe that we shouldn't pay any specific attention to these attempts.
Now, in terms of support for Ukraine, is your President Zelensky planning any further talks with Donald Trump or other European leaders? Do you know if anything is in the diary coming up?
Well, I'm sure I'm not aware of any specific dates, but at the same time, as experience demonstrates, it's extremely important to continue to maintain direct contacts with the European leaders, because it's always fruitful. It allows us to be more persuasive when it comes to President Trump. It's extremely important also to have direct talks and meetings with President Trump, because we see that, especially in recent time, we see that it's very helpful in terms of explaining to President Trump and in terms of changing his stance with regard to Ukraine in favor of Ukraine.
And of course, we have seen that there have been incursions into NATO territory by Russian drones and aircraft. And now we see war games or preparations for war games in Norway, European countries planning for a Russian attack against NATO. Why do you think the Arctic is becoming such a significant place now in geopolitics?
According to some analysts, Arctic can be the region of the next direct conflict between Russia and maybe even with participation of China, which considers itself to be a pre-Arctic power or something like that. Well, Russia will be trying to establish control over resources, strategic resources in that region. So it might cause a direct confrontation, direct conflict between Russia and maybe even with participation of China against NATO countries. It's a possibility. But at the same time, the direct conflict between NATO and Russia is inevitable if Russia somehow manages to conquer and subjugate Ukraine. So the only way to prevent this direct conflict from happening is to support Ukraine and to help us to win the war, to defeat Russia.
And of course, you are moving now into the winter and the difficulties of a war continuing in those conditions, aren't you?
Yes, the thing is that if, for example, last winter, we didn't have blackouts. Now we are starting to have blackouts in big cities of Ukraine. And the reason for that is that Putin decided to destroy our critical infrastructure, our power grid. He's trying to bomb us into blackout, and he thinks that in this way he somehow will force us into submission, but it's totally delusional. You know, he cannot break Ukrainian people, our will to win the war, to defend our country by using bombardments. Situation is similar with Blitz in 1940. Blitz in 1940, Nazis, they failed to bomb the English people into submission. And the same is happening in Ukraine. It will never happen. It only strengthens our resolve to defend ourselves and to win the war.
Oleksandr Merezkho, thank you very much for updating us on the current situation for you. And like you, we will be watching to see what happens in the White House, whether there is some new meeting that can be brokered by Viktor Orban. Oleksandr Merezkho, chair of Ukraine's Foreign Affairs Committee there.